Subscribe and like and comment to help share this content.
This is Rescue Convoy 3. All birds launch to provide air defense. All ships show spooling up for jump. All lights are green. Please confirm jump coordinates in the encrypted battle channel.
Roger that, Commander. We're launching our birds and staying in formation, watching for missiles. There appears to be very little Cylon activity out here.
Fire control warmed up and preparing salute.
FTL is spooled. We are ready to jump. All Vipers combat landings are authorized. RTB, RTB, RTB. Get those fighters on the deck right fracking now.
This is the squadron, Commander. All birds are on the deck.
We are jumping now.
Break spark pad. Action station. Set position 1 throughout the ship. Break spark pad. Action station. Set position 1 throughout the ship.
Reload stock. Ready for alpha salvo. Drinks on the
This
first
is Flight
nuggets of
Operations
their kill
Battlestar
squad.
Demeter. All pilots stick close to your base ships. Keep your heads on a swivel. There will be a very short time between the order to combat land and FTL jump.
No sign of toasters out here. Woo woo.
Keep your mouth shut and your eyes open. And maybe it'll stay that way, Nugget.
Alpha salvo. Drinks on the first nuggets of their kill squad.
Exo Fire Squad still online.
This is Demeter Flight Operations. Scope is clean at the moment. We do believe the toasters are staying out of range, trying to collect signals intelligence. None of you nuggets get any ideas. Stay in formation.
This is Flight Control. We're about to jump. All birds on the deck combat landings are authorized.
I hate the flight for the first shot. Open racks and engage. Are we just as traitors? I hate the flight before the first
This
shot.
is CIC Mercury. All birds stay in formation. Prepare for final jump
Open rack and
preparation.
engage.
All ships confirm your jump coordinates in the encrypted battle channel.
Are we
No
just
broadcasts
as
in the
traitors
clear.
to them as well? Drinks
combat landings. All birds on the deck.
We're not taking points off for messiness.
Greatest marks
20 seconds to FTL jump.
Red Squadron, good to go. Set condition 1. I repeat, set condition 1. This is not a drill.
My cats are green and
Greatest marks are tagged.
The last jump always made people nervous. After handing the Cylons a major defeat, the forces assigned to the now abandoned colonial settlement withdrew. This fleet was an off-the-books operation that Cavill tried to keep unknown to the other 6 models. Most of the forces were drawn from stocks built during the First Cylon War against the colonies. These forces, though technically inferior to the Mercury and Valkyrie class with their modern Mark 7 Vipers, still had great destructive power. In large formations, their firepower was every bit as destructive as the modern base stars, with living, breathing raiders and nuclear weapons. Though some of the tools were crude, they were just as deadly as their modern descendants. Getting these forces out of mothballs had been trivial when compared to acquisition of fuel and munitions. Had Cavill been willing to reveal his second war against humanity to the other models, supplies would be plentiful. Such a disclosure would have exposed his double dealing with the other models. Such a revelation would also expose him to losing a vote by Model 6-1. Prior to the occupation of New Caprica, the models had a majority vote to try and have peace with the humans. They had collectively decided that the annihilation of mankind was a mistake. They felt that they needed to learn how to live with and work with humans. Cavill thought this initiative was stupid, so while giving it lip service on New Caprica, he had chosen to ignore it away from the isolated planet. Admiral Lawson's logistics campaign had been very effective at cutting off supply lines to Cylons that were thousands and thousands of light years away from home. Between Lawson's powerful fleet and the amount of fuel Cavill diverted into his private off-the-books war against the new settlement, the effect was huge. This amplified the impact of Lawson's logistics war. In some cases, modern base stars were hanging in orbit, without sufficient fuel to take a single FTL jump. The task of occupying New Caprica and defending it from Adama and his force of 2 less than half-strength battlestars required only 4 modern base stars. The rest of the fleet was scavenging for supplies, or trying to defend supply lines against Lawson's logistics wars. With such a huge force, maintaining supply lines had threatened to collapse the Cylons' ability to project power. Admiral Lawson's tactic had proven to be much more effective than she had expected. There were cut-off base stars in danger of starvation. Several of the other models had demanded that Cavill provide an accounting of the difficulties. He had deflected these demands. Democracy by model was fine, but Cavill had a few tricks up his sleeve to ensure he got his way when he judged it necessary. Commander Stephen Evans was back in his post as Athena Actual. He was off with a large task force on a mission to gather up scattered forces that had been sent to hit Cylon targets, some up 220 new FTL jumps away. His assigned post was to defend the entrance to the nebula that the fleets would traverse. These operations were designed to give the impression to the Cylons that this colonial fleet was headed many hundreds of thousands of light years away. Part of this mission was to send a few automated ships to get detected very far from this nebula that had 4 planets that would be their new home. The 4th planet had recently been discovered, since there were not 12 habitable planets inside the nebula, one for each tribe. This last discovery allowed for the 4 star groups of the original colonies. They were named New Helios Alpha, Beta, Gamma and Delta. A Valkyrie-class support battlestar was assigned to escort the fleets through the tunnel, which was so narrow, it took 6 to 8 hours to traverse. The mood on board convoy number 3 was celebratory. It had been a long journey, nearly 3 years from the colonies. People were talking excitedly in the hallways as they kept an eye on instrumentation designed to detect radiation from the nebula, infiltrating the ship hulls. This fear was due to the extensive battle damage that had not been repaired. The now abandoned new settlement was a considerable distance from the mobile shipyard, which had only been towed to New Helios Alpha 3 weeks ago.
One more good salvo ought to do it. All right, let's bring our people home.
For the time being, the people were going to have to remain in orbit. It would take months to build housing for the future residents of these 4 worlds. A debate had already been raging among the earlier arrivals to orbit. The 12 colonies had suffered grave environmental damage during the 2,000 years they have been populated. Development would naturally be needed in order to accommodate human populations. However, the damage to the original 12 colonies had been quite severe. A large political movement had been formed advocating that the policies of development of these new worlds be much friendlier to the planets. Virtually, everybody agreed that the fleet needed to be maintained. To maintain that fleet would require development of industry. This new movement wanted the development of these new worlds to be sustainable and respectful of the new planets. The extremely controversial discussion of repopulation had been raging within the fleet. During the 2 months that Admiral Lawson was away, scientists had discussed the population trend of the survivors. Similar to analysis done by Dr. Baltar prior to his presidency as predicted the end of humanity within 18 years. Obviously, something had to change in order to not have the species become extinct. The right to control of their own bodies, and therefore abortion had been enshrined in the Articles of Colonization of the 12 colonies for thousands of years. With populations measured in tens of billions of residents, there was no issue of extinction coming up. Now the numbers of people were down to under 300,000, possibly as low as 250,000, including the 83,000 residents that were arriving now. Abortion rights are considered human rights to most of the colonists outside the Geminies. The new colonial citizens were facing extinction in as little as 3 decades. Part of the trend was due to being in a fleet fighting for their lives. If the war was truly over, that would stop untimely deaths of military-aged people. What if the war went on? People asked. The scientist had estimated the size of the Cylon fleet. This had caused great concern. To maintain if we capable of fighting with the Cylons required a much greater population than they had. 3 years of running and fighting and desperately dying had sapped the energy from the survivors. They were members of a developed society with very low population growth for centuries before 2 destructive wars. With conscription in 25% of the population in the military and another 25% involved in shipbuilding and supplies to the military, the population necessary to sustain the civilization needed to be measured in at minimum tens of millions. Cory Brooks, the leader of the People's Council, had proposed economic incentives to encourage having children. The scientists had already done a broad poll on the subject. Economic incentives would help make the bitter medicine go down more easily. This was not enough. The only way to save this population from extinction meant ending 2 of the fundamental rights of a colonial citizen: abortion and birth control. The Geminies were quite happy about this eventuality. The vast majority of the survivors were politically used to liberal democracy were appalled. The debate on talk wireless and social media was toxic. However, there was a civility that had been absent in earlier debates. Apparently, the near total annihilation of the colonies had been a growth experience for the survivors. Those that favored the scientists' proposals warned to do otherwise was suicide. As bitter as the political feeling, the Cylon as the common enemy had forged a sense of unity. A leading feminist, aged 24 years old, joked that she of course could choose not to engage in acts of procreation. When the alternative to such a law was death and extinction, the arguments were framed with a newfound civility that had been lacking since the exodus from Kobol. Admiral Eva Yevka Lawson sat in her office in her daily blue uniform. Her hands were folded in her lap. Not a black hair on her head or anywhere else was out of place. Her team of 3 NCO stylists had worked on her for an hour this morning, prior to the meeting with Cory Brooks and Senior Military Command. Her new XO, Major Stanley Jacobs, was looking equally well groomed. After a knock on the door, Commanders Modi, Ramirez and Evans walked into the room. When the meeting was called, Admiral Lawson had sent out an email and replied to the appointment on her electronic calendar. The message had been succinct and simple. Tell the truth. Do not make stuff up to cover for me or my decisions. It had also been made clear that there was not going to be a lot of saluting. The instructions from the Marines that escorted the commanders from the flight pod to Admiral Lawson's office were also quite clear. The senior commanders were instructed to get themselves a cup of coffee, and a Danish, if they so choose, and to take a seat. Each of the senior Battlestar commanders did exactly that. Executive of the People's Council, who was known by her unofficial call sign, Housewife, came into the office flanked by 2 Marines and a half-dozen civilian security contingent. She had in fact been a 34-year-old homemaker prior to the war, active in the local politics, having been elected to the school board the summer prior to the fall of the 12 colonies. Lawson, Jacobs, and the three commanders stood up and remained standing until Brooks had taken her coffee and a Danish and sat down. Admiral Lawson took mental note that the Brooks civilian security force had tripled in size. This, she noted with a self-satisfied grin, was probably due to the controversial recommendations of the scientists who had proposed taking away access to birth control and abortion as the only way to avoid extinction. Admiral Lawson, Brooks began, "I would like to congratulate you on the successful operation that has brought in 83,000 new residents to the new Helios Nebula. I am sure you are counting on the fact that you succeeded will mean there will be no consequences for your actions." Lawson knew this was not going to get her far, but she had decided to push back gently. "I took an oath to protect the citizens of the colonies. I saw an opportunity, and I took it. We don't leave that many people behind, Executive Brooks. The lines of authority are a bit fuzzy here," Brooks admitted. "The mistake that you made was your assumption that I would not approve the operation. Your actions to provide the rescue convoys with transportation were potentially dangerous. They definitely violated my civilian authority. You have every right to order an FTL jump of any ship in the fleet for virtually any reason." "I know, sir," Lawson replied. "You did not, nor will you ever have the authority to dump 100,000 people on 4 planets in order to make room for your half-assed rescue mission. From now on, you will inform me of major military operations before they happen. Failure to do so will lead to you losing your job and potentially being separated from the colonial military." "Is that understood?" asked Brooks. "It is, sir." "Did you even consider the possibility that you could be wrong before you ordered over 100,000 civilians to disembark on a camping trip that is into its 3rd month?" Lawson nodded her head yes. "One of the lessons I have learned during your 2-month road trip is that Commander Ramirez is a very capable fleet commander. That means you can be replaced. Is that understood?" "Yes, sir, it is. Are you aware of how much danger you potentially brought into this fleet?" "Yes, Executive Brooks." Lawson took pains to use her formal title. "I will point out that our casualties were very light, and we brought the Demeter, a Jupiter Mark I Battlestar, back with us. If your fracking plan was so brilliant, why did you choose to hide it from your senior commanders?" "Because, had I failed, I wanted them to not be tainted by my failure. This group of commanders would have unblemished records, and you and your government should feel comfortable trusting them. I am to believe that none of the officers in this room were aware of your plans before you launched your little road trip?" "Yes, Executive Brooks," Lawson answered. "That is because it is the truth. I would find it interesting hearing honest feedback from your officers about your decisions in this matter," Brooks remarked. "I have a whole society to build on, and perhaps a presidential election to plan for. I assume you can read the Admiral in on your plans to withdraw the fleet into the new Helios Nebula, Commander Ramirez?" "Yes, I will read her in. Good day, Admiral, Commanders." Brooks grabbed another pastry on her way out of the room. Commander Maria Ramirez put the folder on Lawson's desk. "It's Operation Magic Trick Step 9. We have automated ships heading off in 3 directions. We have picked up signals intelligence indicating that Adama's fleet is in full retreat, heading possibly to the Ionian Nebula. We are maintaining temporary bases at waypoints for another couple of weeks. After that, we will rely on Raptor Recon to meet up with stragglers and guide them to our new home." "Very good," Lawson complimented. "Do we have a handle on long-range communications?" "The Nebula takes care of that. We are not going to build a communications network in and out of this place, because that runs counter to keeping the place a secret," Commander Ramirez acknowledged. "No warship, Viper or Raptor or civilian craft leaves this system with any navigational data on it. Every ship comes in clean. As far as setting objectives, those are set up by telescope and then calculated. The navigational history is deleted and replaced with random data each and every FTL jump." "That protocol may be necessary," Commander Evans replied. "It can make finding our way home problematic. We have to make sure the only information the Cylons get on us is what we feed Lieutenant de Bures on the IT staff. It blows my mind that a skin job has managed to maintain cover in our fleet for over 1,000 days." Commander Ramirez's voice was dripping with anger. Are you angry because she lasted so long or that she did it while she was on your IT staff, dating back to before you got promoted to commander? Mercury XO Jacobs asked. The question earned him an angry glare from Commander Ramirez. Permission to speak freely? Commander Evans stood up, staring down at the Admiral, who was looking pretty relaxed, all things considered. Proceed. Admiral Lawson looked amused. If you ever pull another stunt like that, you will need to put me in prison, because I will beat the crap out of you. Sir. Commanders Modi and Ramirez nodded agreement, but said nothing. Okay, let's get a look at our reconnaissance plan. The senior commanders meeting broke up after lunchtime. Everyone knew that Lawson had the best cuisine in the fleet, and they were not going to miss an opportunity to have a good meal.
We've got them now. Reaching bingo fuel. Action stations, this is not a drill.
Finally, it came down to Major Jacobs and Admiral Lawson. So Major Jacobs, were we going to need some time in the mobile shipyard to take care of our battle damage? No, we mostly took armor hits. This can be repaired away from a shipyard, Jacobs answered. So, I am offering you the XO job here. Whiskey Jones is getting his own command. I would rather not, sir. The neurological issue that cost me my flight status might interfere with my ability to do the job. Your mind is as sharp as ever. Being my XO is a great job. I don't want to be your XO. I want to retire from the military. Why the frack would you want to do that? Lawson asked. You have a ton of experience. You are one of the best flight instructors the fleet has ever had. You went to war college and you know how to use the Mercury-class gun batteries. I don't want to be in the military anymore. Why not? Because if I stay in the military, I can't live the life I want for myself. What the frack are you talking about? Why can't you? Her voice trailed off as she saw a flushed look on his face and a ton of anxiety was showing through. I don't want to be your executive officer. Because if I keep that job, the Colonial Fleet Code of Military Justice. Oh no, Stanley, when I was flying in your squadrons, I took leave with your drunken, whoring escapades, because I cared about you. I wanted to keep you out of trouble. I've always wondered why you kept tagging along and then not drinking. Surely not because we needed a designated driver. Major Stanley Jacobs was breathing heavily and shaking. You fracking idiot, sir. I have always loved you. I don't want to be your XO because I want to be with you. Lawson felt a scream building up in her stomach. Something had changed her when she had been captured and raped by the skin job cavil so many days ago. Some kind of conditioning or programming that even talk therapy could not penetrate. Stanley Jacobs was a handsome man. Several invitations prior to the Second War had not landed him in her bed. She could do worse. He had shown 20 years of loyalty. Come here, she said, stepping lightly as she locked the cabin door. What about the fraternization rule? Jacobs asked, showing signs of physical excitement. When I approved Major Evans being the XO on the Athena, the fraternization policy was changed. All we have to do is report our relationship to Fleet Human Resources. We can do that after we have a relationship. You do want a relationship, don't you, Stan? The Admiral had already unbuttoned her collar and slipped out of her uniform jacket. She had overcome the buzzing in her head and gently guided Jacobs out of the office and into her quarters. Yes, Admiral. In here it's Yevka. Lawson smiled as she began to get out of her sleeveless military-issue t-shirt.
They never stood. They never stood a chance. One more good salvo ought to do it. We haven't used up the whole armory. It's a good day. One more good salvo ought to do it. We haven't used up the whole armory. Good day. Fire control is warmed up and preparing solutions.
Rescue Convoy Number 1. Welcome to Helios Alpha. Prepare for docking maneuvers. Your instructions will be coming by wireless in 3 minutes.
Weapons free, by the numbers, folks. Weapons free, by the numbers, folks. Open back. Escort priority 1 is still online.
The crews of the rescue ships and the evacuees themselves from the new settlements were at a high level of excitement by the time they arrived at Helios Alpha. For over 1,000 days, the mood of the fleet had been the same. A crushing pessimism had gripped the emotional state of hundreds of thousands of refugees. Now the talk of their new home came with a new wave of optimism. The political battles ahead would be difficult. Life would not be easy. Carving out an industrialized spacefaring society and 4 small, relatively resourceful planets. The prospect of endless pursuits and war coming to an end injected the entire population with a sense of energy that they have not had since before the fall and the beginning of the Second Cylon War.
Escort clearance zone intact. Priority 1 is in safe hands. Fire control is warmed up and preparing. Get every gun ready and bearing on the hostiles. Fire control is warmed up and preparing. Get every gun ready and bearing on the hostiles. There's one single pressure lock between those pilots and cold space. There's one single pressure lock between those pilots and cold space. Are we just a trade and flip to them as well?
Matt has the green and locked.
Red Squadron, good to go. Action station. Set condition 1 throughout the ship.
Matt has the green and locked.
Action station. Set condition 1 throughout the ship.
As planned, we have arrived last at the new Helios settlement. Admiral, I think you need to make a speech or something.
Really? A speech?
Something inspirational, perhaps, before the People's Council gets the idea in its head that it should arrest you.
All right, put me on fleet-wide.
Back when I was in the academy, we were taught a few stories. Heroic stories about larger-than-life people who risked everything so as to never leave anyone behind. When I became aware that the new settlement outposts had been established, we knew we had a problem on our hands. The settlement was too close to the destroyed 12 colonies. There was no way we could defend those outposts given the large Cylon forces in the area. We all knew in our hearts that we had to move on. We needed to put enormous distances between ourselves and the Cylons. The civilian government acknowledged this reality. We put forward a request to build more ships and move to a safer place. I felt then that my duty as Commander-in-Chief Colonial Fleet that I needed to do more. Yet I had a war to fight and chose to focus on short-term issues. That mistake, which was mine alone, led to us leaving hundreds of thousands of people behind. I was the responsible leader. We now return with the remnants of those we left behind. The colonies themselves are now empty. The 11 outposts are now also empty. I will admit now that I ordered that rescue mission without informing the civilian government. Further, I did not inform the officers in the fleet we left to defend our new home. As we return home, not to the colonies, but a new home, I will be facing consequences for my actions. I am confident that the mitigating factors will be taken into account. If this is going to be the end of my military career, well, the only thing I will say about it is it was worth it. We are Colonial Fleet, and we do not leave people behind.
Action station. Action station. This is not a drill.
Get every gun ready and bearing on the hostile. No safety all.
Ready to blitz them as well. Waiting for the roar of that first salvo.
Ready off the pad.
Action station. Set condition 1 throughout the ship. Weapons free, prepare for engagement.
Prepare flak ammunition.
Every single one of our pilots comes home today. Understand?
For the Colonial Fleet, for the 12 colonies.
Lords of Kobol, watch over us.
There's one single pressure lock between those pilots and cold space. black cats are green and lost. Reload stopped. Ready for Alpha Salvo. We're clear. Preparing payload.
Oh, I'm getting some great Viper footage now. Awesome.